And start. And we are. Six class. Do you want to start with it?
So probably is this one offering the Mandela?
Yeah.
You might need to help me provide the melody.
Someday Shindu Miteu Shiva Shu Janchu Bardu Daki Chapsuchi Daki Jinyin Sananki Drola Venture Sange Dubashok Sange Churan Soki Choknamba Janchu Bardu Daki Chapsuchi Daki Jinyin Sananki Drola Venture Sange Dubashok Sange Churan Soki Choknamba Janchu Bardu Daki Chapsuchi Daki Jinyin Sananki Drola Venture Sange Dubashok.
After Ducky, is that Jin Sok?
Yeah, it is sometimes.
And then sometimes
I've heard different things, different reasons. Like you're supposed to say. See, I'm not 100% sure, but I've heard that when you are the student, you should say Jinying, and when you're the teacher, you should say Jing Sok. I've heard that before, but then I've also heard before if you're by yourself, you should say one or the other. So I'm not 100% sure what the reasons are, but I know that all the teachers that I've heard always say Jinying. Yeah, not Jing Sok. So that's something we can find out at some point. It's a good observation. All right, so moving on, class 4. The text that we are reading, the Dhammapada Sutra that we're working with, continues, and Subhuti is asking Lord Buddha. He says, "O conqueror, what will happen in the future, in the days of the last 500, when the holy Dharma is approaching its final destruction? how could any one of those times ever see accurately the meaning of the explanations of the sutras, such as these ones? So it's a little bit of a sober subject we'll be talking about today, about the dying of the teachings. Yeah. Because Lord Buddha says everything that's caused must end. Everything that starts must die, right? We're born, we'll die. So that also counts for his teachings. So they will die too. So that's what we'll be talking about today. The death of his teachings. So in order to understand that, we're going to unpack this. You know, he's asking about the 500, the last 500. What does that mean? So we're going to dive into all of that today. And the teaching, this class starts off with the 4 lines that actually come from a different scripture, come from the Abhidharma Kosha. These are the first lines, so it's supposed to be 4 lines. And that was written by Master Vasubandhu, if you remember correctly, the Abhidharma Kosha, right? Around 350 AD. The Abhidharma Kosha is the main text for the Abhidharma. It's actually the main Buddhist book for the lower schools in the Hinayana and the Theravada countries, that Southeast Asia. It's a very difficult book, apparently, and in the very end of this book, if you get through it at all, this is the last sentences, and it's a little bit depressing. So say Tumpe, Damchu, Namji, Telung, Dam, Tope, Takni, Do. Okay, that's the first part. So Tumpe means teacher. Especially in the original scriptures, it refers to Lord Buddha, to Shakyamuni Buddha, this Tumpe. And then Damchu means the holy Dharma. Holy Dharma distinguishing from other Dharma, like Hindu teachings or whatever. When we say holy Dharma, we refer to teachings of Lord Buddha. Namjite means there's 2 types, 2 divisions. So you can divide Dharma into 2 divisions. Okay. And Lung, you must have heard the word Lung before, Tanji, you recall? No. Lung is often used to say teaching. Right? And often, especially in the monasteries, when they give you a lung on something, they don't give explanations. They'll just sit there and they'll kind of chant the whole thing, and you don't know what it means at all. And that's how they often start. They teach you, and then over the years you unpack these things. But so lung is like an oral transmission. Even in my Tibetan class, we're trying to learn the grammar right now, and they have this text that that has all the secrets of Tibetan grammar in it. So what they do is they make the kids memorize this verse, and then over the years they unpack it, right? So just even in school, it's like a lung. You start with the oral transmission, you memorize it, and then over time you start to understand what the heck it actually means. Yeah, so that's the lung. And you could say it means physical dharma, right? Physical teachings, the books, and verbal teachings. Dang is and then Tokpe means the teachings as they exist in people's minds, like realizations. And Agni means the combination of those two. So it's saying the Dharma of the teacher can be divided in two types. The physical teachings, which is the books, people teaching it verbally, and then the realizations, which would mean people that actually understand it and realize it in their minds, right? So that's the two forms of Dharma. Physical Dharma and then realizations. So those are two kinds of Dharma. And what is it for them to survive? What does it mean for Dharma to stay alive in this world? What is the point at which you can say that Dharma still survives? And at which point is it past that? So then the second part of the sentence, Detsinjepa. Detsinjepa. Maje. Dang. Druparjepa. Konajin. So that's the second part, meaning Detsinjepa means preserving it, keeping it. Maje means someone teaching it correctly. Druparjepa, Dang is end. Druparjepa is someone practicing it properly. And Konajin means only that, nothing less. So if someone isn't teaching it properly, then it will die. And if nobody's realizing anything, it will die. Right? If they can't be taught properly, the physical teachings will be gone. And if they can't be practiced properly, the actual realizations will not happen. So you could say if people are not reaching the realizations anymore, you could say Dharma in the minds of the people has died. What do you think happens first? The teaching or the realization die?
Realization.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because we can keep our library stocked. We can have iPod or iPodcasts till the cow comes home. Like we can have all that, but if nobody's listening in and putting to practice, then there's not even a point in having all of that. But I mean, that can stay around for a long time. Right? That makes sense. So realizations will be gone first. Yeah.
I wonder if, with all this modern technology, I wonder if that actually inhibits people from having those deep realizations. This information is so quick and easy these days that, and you can have any book.
Information overload, yeah. But then what does it come down to, It comes down to your karma. If you have the karma, you can live in a place where there's tons of technology, or you can live in a place with hardly any technology. If you have the karma to hear it and practice it, then you will.
Yeah.
I know exactly what you're saying, because this is one of the problems that we're facing as educators with young people, because they have lots of information, but they have absolutely no context from elders any longer, because they just go to Google. But in the old days, if they had a question, they went to a human elder who could put the whole piece into context. And then that's kind of the true transmission. So
It's
we're
very
missing
different.
that piece.
Yeah, it's very different. It's very different. But again, like, if you practice mainly morality, then realizations, if you practice morality, then your concentration will be enhanced, which will lead to realizations in meditation. Like, it has to. It has to.
But I guess we're saying, so does that come about from transmission, teacher to student, more than?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. Yeah, I think so. So, just to be clear, that when we're talking here about these teachings will die, we are talking about Shakyamuni, Buddha's teachings. So when they are dead, like, say someone's practicing what he's taught and they gain realizations, and then maybe they're starting their own lineage by teaching what they have realized, and when they've reached enlightenment, then they're starting a new circle, right? So what we're talking about today is Shakyamuni's teachings, Shakyamuni Buddha's teaching. They will die. Just to have that clear.
So I've heard of Shakyamuni, but we haven't referred to it the past few classes. How is he? Or is that?
So these are all the things that we study come from
Shakyamuni.
Lord Buddha.
It's another
It's
name.
just another name for Lord Buddha.
And these teachings were taught by Geshe Michael Roach and quite a few years ago, but when he was teaching them, he was really stressing how it's already dying out so quickly that you'd go to Taiwan, and if you would find a monastery of any kind, it would be in between the brothels, and the teachings are just disappearing so quickly that there's only, at that time when he taught it, there were only 5 people left that had the highest degrees of Geshe, the monastery, all the crazy courses that you can do and then become this Halampa Geshe. So there were only 5 of those left. So by now, I think at least a couple of them must have passed on too. So there's not many left, not many authentic teachers left that carry this lineage, right? So we're very fortunate that we've run into it. But he's stressing, like, we have to preserve it, because say if you die, you want to be reborn in this realm, and you most likely will be, to then come in contact with these teachings or with one of those masters that there are only like 3 or 4 left, like, chances are getting pretty small. So he's stressing, like, it's our duty to try to preserve, because it is dying out. And the southern countries in Asia, they never had anything more than the lowest schools, period. So they do the Abhidharma and Vinaya. And he's very, very concerned that people he says you can go to teachers all over the world, ask them for explanations on the different schools and the books of Buddhism, and they can't even answer you because there's just very few people that have that information. So it's serious.
Or are we getting ready to birth something new?
Well, there's definitely different ways to look at it. And I think a lot of great things are happening. I mean, I know that now, for the longest time, women couldn't practice. Now, in the last years, actually, I think it was last year or the year before, the Dalai Lama given the okay that now the nuns can also get the same degree as what the monks can, which they never could before. They were never allowed to study and practice in a monastery, so they can now. So there's good things happening for sure. And like Geshe Michael Roach, he's amazing. He's traveling all over the world non-stop teaching in disguise, because he's teaching about business, and he's got Buddhism like in disguise. Right? Nobody really knows. He doesn't use the word karma, or and he gets thousands and thousands of people to each of his talks, and they're all practicing it. So there's good things for sure happening, and lots of people I've seen translating all the old books that there's so few left, and they're translating to keep it preserved. So I definitely see that. But looking at all of this, it's like, yeah, we have to. It's important that we support and practice and help preserve in whatever capacity we have, because otherwise it will die out. It's not just going to be there.
It's interesting because it sounds like this is what they predicted. Subhuti asking that question.
So now we're going to. So there's different opinions on how long Buddhism will stay in the world. So these are a few different scriptures that say different things. So we're going to go over them, and it's a little bit of a heady class. So I hope you hang in there. So different opinions that came from sutras, spoken by Lord Buddha, interestingly enough, because they're different. They contain different information. So the first one is Dode Kelsang. So Dode means sutra. Kelsang means of the golden age. So Sutra of the Golden Age. So in there, the Buddha says it will die out 500 years from the time of his passing in the pure form. Okay, then he says after that, 1500 years as a shadow of its former self. So 2000 years total. And that is done. I think 500 years in its pure form, personally, as I'm thinking about it, well, that's pretty long, because we've all done the game, like the telephone game, right? Where you whisper a word and you pass it on and it just completely changes. So I'm thinking 500 years in the pure form, that's pretty good if people are teaching it and spreading it and making it pure, right? So 2000 years total. So that would have been around the 1400s. The second one says, his name is Sortrang Chengi Tokyo. And Chen means rosary or mala. Sor means finger. So it means a rosary of fingers. And this refers to this person that met a really crazy teacher who told him, if you kill 1,000 people and cut off their fingers and make a rosary out of it, you will reach nirvana. So he had 999 people killed, and then the 1,000th person he was going to kill was Lord Buddha. And he tried to chase him and get him, but eventually, just like many others, just become his disciple, right? So, so in there it says 1,000 years. 1,000 years total before it's disappearing from the world. Next one. Dawa Ningpodo. So Do means sutra. Dava Ningpo means the essence of the moon.
Essence of the moon?
Yeah. And in there, Lord Buddha says it lasts about 2,000 years. The next one, Nyingje Pekar. Nyingje is compassion, same as karuna in Sanskrit. And Pekar is white lotus, so the white lotus sutra of compassion. Oh, and then I didn't write this one down.
And how long for them?
Sorry?
How long for the white lotus of compassion? How long does it last?
1,500.
1,500.
Yeah.
1,500.
Yeah, 1,500. And then say Lamo,
Lamo,
Drima Mepe, Shupale, Lo Nito, Ngagya, Nadong Marchan, Giyuldu, Tampe Dudar. Goddess of flawless light.
Goddess of flawless light. Yeah. Oh, I like
nice.
Yeah. Basically what this says is 2,500 years from the passing of the Buddha. Which was 500 BC. So that would put us about 400 years from now. And it says also, like part of that statement was that it would reach the land of the people with the red faces. That it would spread, the Holy Dharma will spread to their land. So, that's what she said. So this goddess, whose name is Flawless Light, she said after 2,500 years, the Holy Dharma will spread to the land of the ruddy complexions. So it would come here. And they say, how do you know if it's come here? They say if a group of monks performs a regular sojong. Sojong is the confession. So when they come together and they do like a purification ceremony type of thing. And that's happening, so we can say it's officially arrived here. Yeah, so that's the last book that Shoni Lama quotes. 5 different opinions. And actually later on Shoni Lama Drakpa will explain why it's not contradictory that they all say different things.
It's just similar to mine.
To
Timeline.
yeah. Yeah.
So it came to the land of the red faces, which
Yeah.
would be here,
Yeah.
the First Nations.
They say. Yeah.
Maybe. So that's his land around.
Well, it doesn't specifically say Canada, but to the west. Yeah. Um, I just want to make sure I get this right because all these numbers. So apparently there's different sources that also say 2,500 years. And another great commentary to the perfection of wisdom. In there it says 5,000 years. 5,000, yeah. And Shoni Drakpa Shidrup, he says he goes with the last one, with 5,000. So that's what he says. And he breaks it down in a couple of categories. So like I said already, there's 2 kinds of Dharma, right? One is the books and the teachings, and the other one is what? Realizations, yeah. So they talk here about Tripitaka. So you can see that word here. Tripitaka. It's translated as baskets. I think the Tibetans actually translate it as groups. So basically, a Buddhist canon has 3 big pots, 3 big baskets. Okay, and the first one is Dowa, which is vows, monastic vows. It refers to 8 sets of monastic vows. And actually, of those vows, the first 3 are for laymen, and then the last 5 are for ordained people. So this is one basket that's not gotten hold in the West very much. And the next one is the Sutra Basket, Dodri. And they say don't get confused with the word sutra here, because sutra can mean different things. In this case, it means division. The Sutra Basket refers to the extraordinary training of concentration. And then the last one. So what do you think the last would be? If the first one is like vowed morality, the second one's concentration, then what would Nunpa refer to?
Practice.
Sorry?
Practice.
Morality.
First one's morality, right? Dowa is vowed morality.
Concentration. Right.
Vowed morality, second one concentration, third one,
Wisdom.
yeah, wisdom. So Abhidharma Pitaka it's called, because Abhidharma, as you might recall, means wisdom. So the group of sutras that train you on wisdom. That's the third division. So when you say the Dharma is staying in the world, you mean these mainly. So the morality, the physical Dharma refers to these three things. So about morality, the books on concentration, and books on wisdom. So there's about 1,500 separate works that still exist, and how do you know which work belongs in which basket? It will fully depend on the subject matter, right? So if it's about wisdom, it would be in the last. If it's about vows of any sort, it will be in the first. And the second one is about concentration.
And wisdom is emptiness and calm.
So this is like the three types of physical dharmas.
Mm-hmm. And do you remember those trainings, Yasmin? Because I know that you had them before, like the 3 extraordinary trainings was morality, concentration, and wisdom. Do you remember that? Yes. So what makes them extraordinary is if they're done with wisdom, right? If they're imbued with wisdom. Because we can do kind things all day long, and that's fine, and it will bring a result, because everything will bring a result, but the result will kind of end there, right? If I give Yasmin a cookie, then yeah, I'll get so many things later. But if I give Yasmin a cookie with wisdom, with understanding that any cookie that I can even ever have in my life is if I give it away, right? Then it powers it up. Then it becomes like extraordinary. Then it becomes powerful. Then it becomes a way to get out of suffering, because you start to understand how things work, right?
So awareness.
Yeah.
Awareness and intention.
Yeah.
So were you doing that at the same time as you're giving?
It's great if you could do that. Yeah. So and what we've learned so far already is when you see emptiness directly, after that you don't have to think about it anymore, because it's so deeply ingrained. You just know. So everything you do has already that imbued. But until that time, we have to remind ourselves like millions of times in everything we do, and have that intellectual understanding increase until it gets to the point where it's just totally automatic. You don't have to think about it anymore. Yeah. Yeah, and then they speak again about that you have to meditate if you want to see emptiness directly. If you don't do it, then you won't. So work up your time. Start small in meditation and increase over time. It will just build. And eventually, you can sit for 45 minutes or an hour, no problem. But until that time, you just do a few minutes. Just add a little bit. And then, he says, if people would say I was cutting wood and I saw emptiness, that's absolutely not true. You cannot be doing something because you don't have a perception of doing something while you're in a state of emptiness directly, right? Because you are in deep, deep meditation. You can't be chopping wood at the same time. So morality is required for concentration. And you cannot really concentrate if you have bad things on your conscience. You can't. So it's really, really good to confess. Confess to yourself. Confess to a teacher if you have one. And the best confession would be, the best thing to do is to avoid it, of doing it again. Like I can tell you, I won't go in details, but something happened like a year or two ago that's I know I shouldn't do, but I really want to. And because I know I have the tendency to want to do something that's not good, I will tell my teacher and I say, God, I want to do this, and then I have someone to, how do you say? Be accountable to. So then I won't do it, even though I still feel a little bit like I really do want to do it. But now I can't because I told him, right? And then actually last week it happened again. The same thing was offered to me. And this time I didn't have to tell my teacher. I could just say, no, sorry, I can't. I won't do this, And it wasn't hard anymore. I had nothing that I had that pull before that I really wanted to do it. So do you think over time when you think about it and you confess, you be open and honest, that it will just go and it won't be something that you feel drawn to anymore at a certain point. Just wear it out, right? And then thinking of that, I need to keep my morality if I want to become enlightened. If I'm going to do things that I know aren't good things to do, then that's going to be in my conscience, and that will not allow me to become a good meditator. Right? So avoiding it perfectly is the best confession, because it will destroy that karma. Okay, so now we can speak a little bit about those extraordinary practices, the morality, concentration, and wisdom. Here it says that they can occur before the first path. Do you remember the 5 paths? We went over those, didn't we? 5 paths. Remember? What was the first path?
Accumulation.
Yeah.
Accumulation. Path of preparation. Path of seeing.
Yeah.
Accumulation. Slow down.
Accumulation, path of preparation, path of seeing, path of... What do you need to do after you see emptiness? Habituate your mind. Yeah, path of habituation, and then the last path is you're done, right? No more learning.
So what would you call the last one?
No more learning. Yeah. So they say these trainings can already occur before the first path. So you can already become well practiced at those 3 before you reach the first path. And if you remember the first path being accumulation, on this path of accumulation, you start to fear renunciation. Remember? Like you start to develop a disgust for this life, knowing that it's never going to, how many different partners I'll have in my life, or new cars, or new jobs, how many times I'll change, I will never be happy. There will always be a next thing. It's just not going to work out. You start to see that and understand that you have to go beyond that in order to become happy. You have to not fall for all these traps anymore where you listen to all the stories in your mind, right? All the wanting and the not wanting is just not going to make you happy. So you realize that at that first path. So they're saying before that even happens, you can already become a good practitioner practicer, a good practitioner for morality, concentration, and wisdom. So that's kind of nice. So what we're doing now is we're talking about those 5,000 years. So Shoni Drakpa Lama said, I go with the last one, 5,000 years. And I'm going to divide those 5,000 years in groups of 10. 10. We're going to divide it in 10. So every year would be 500, right? To get to 5,000. So I just did it like that in 3. The first part of that would be the era of results. So the first 1,500 years would fall under that. So 3 groups of 500. So the era of results. So he says the teachings will remain for 5,000 years, divided into 10 periods of 500 years. So the first period falls under the era of results. So the very first thing what happens is lots of people will attain nirvana. Okay, so that's the first 500 years. Then the second 500 years, lots of people become non-returners, which means they don't need to come back as samsaric beings in the suffering realm, right? They have reached high realizations, high states, so they can actually be born in the form of formless realm with wisdom. So they're not there to just burn up all that good karma and don't go to the hell, which we talked about before, right? We don't want to get born there. But you can be born there if you have tons of wisdom and you use it. You can do whatever you want. When you're enlightened being, you can be born wherever you want. It's no big deal. So the era of results, yeah. Lots of people attain nirvana, first one, then lots of people become the non-returners. Also the once-returners. And then the third one is lots of people become stream enterers, which is what? Stream enterer.
You're almost there.
Stream enter is you have entered the stream. When you see emptiness directly, you are in that stream on your way out. You could see it as a conveyor belt in a factory or something. You're on that belt, you're on your way out, right? So the era of results is great. So then the next 500 years, we get into the second era, which is the era of practice, the era of trying. Trying, not succeeding, right? So we're going lower and lower now, right? We're moving away and Buddhism is starting to die out, right? So now we're getting in, so number 4 is people are training in wisdom. The next one, people are training in concentration. So we're going backwards. Next one, people are training in morality. So we're getting really low now. The last one era is the era of physical dharma. So there's 4 left. So we have 2,000 years left. So the era of the physical dharma. So now what's left is Abhidharma Basket is left. So you can still find in the library a book on wisdom, right?
So what is the first 500 years of the era of physical dharma?
the Abhidharma basket exists. So remember we talked about the three baskets, the
Yeah.
Tripitaka. So the Abhidharma means wisdom. So the wisdom basket exists. And then number 8 is the Sutra Basket exists. So you can still find some teachings on concentration, meditation. And then the last one, the number 9 is the Morality Basket exists. And the very last 500 years would be era of just a trace. Nobody understands or practices the Dharma. So this is how he explains it dying out. And according to this, we would be in about somewhere between number 5 and 7 right now. So in the era of practice. And, not many people go beyond, go to steps 1, 2, or 3, or 4. Some do still, but we don't see a whole lot of people reaching nirvana, right? But some do.
So when we were talking about these 5,000 years, this is like first you were showing just talking about 5 different scriptures that offered how many years, but this was the one with the longest. This was
Yeah,
6.
and this is the one you went with. And so he says why they're not contradictory is because some of them were stated to make people scared, to make sure they, get kick in the butt, start practicing. Others were because of, it's not really clear when the Buddha was even born, when about the years, like, we don't really know the numbers for sure. And they say others refer to only to India. Yeah. So he says the 5,000 year estimate is considered the accurate one. Does that make sense? So if we read that first paragraph again, after teaching, he says, "O conqueror, what will happen in the future, in the days of the last 500, when the Dharma is approaching its final destruction?" So he refers to the last 500 of the physical Dharma, right? He says, what will happen? So that refers to those 10 eras of 500 each, which the worst of the one is the last one, number 10. So he's asking, will there still be people around then, at that time of the last 500, who could understand this? And Lord Buddha replies, Subhuti, don't ask such a stupid question. So that's kind of heartening. He says, yes, there will be people, even in distant time, that will understand this. And then he says, but if they think they are people, then they don't understand it. So he says the bodhisattvas who live in the last 500 will understand the Diamond Cutter Sutra. But if they think that 4 things exist, then they would not be great bodhisattvas. So he repeats that 3 times. So what does that mean? Well, we've spoken about that already, I guess. That's kind of the repeating subject in the Diamond Cutter Sutra, right? If they exist from their own side, if they're self-existent, if they think things exist self-existently, then they're not true bodhisattvas. And, we've said it. When we see emptiness directly, then we know that things don't exist out there, but we understand, we know that we are just labeling things all the time. And we label them because of our past deeds. That's how we're forced to see them. So if you know that when you are an Arya, having seen emptiness directly, then of course if you move beyond that, if you become an enlightened being, if you reach nirvana first, you know that. Okay. Otherwise you're not a true bodhisattva, that's what he's saying. And he's dividing that in 4 ways. Dak means self. Self-nature. Dak. The sense of me. So you know that the way you see yourself is a projection, is always changing, right? It's not fixed. So we deny that there is a me. That doesn't depend on projections. So of course there is a me. We're not saying there's no me. But it's a me that is always forced to see themselves through their perception because of their karma. So that's the first one. The second one, Semchen, means a sentient being. Say Semchen.
Ascended beings?
Sentient being.
Oh, sentient.
Yeah. Anyone with a mind. So he says that anybody with a mind doesn't exist self-existently. Anybody with a mind exists also, again, as a projection. The way I see Yasmin is purely based on my perception, right? The way Turjit sees Yasmin is very different. So that's the second one. The third one is Suk. Suk means life. Say Suk.
So,
It kind of means like me over a span of your life. So basically they're all synonyms for each other. The last one is Gang Sak. Say Gang Sak. Represents a person in the sense of someone who moves around. Someone who comes and goes. Someone who moves. So, number 1 emphasizes me. Number 2 emphasizes me and mine. Number 3 emphasizes me over a lifetime. And 4 emphasizes a person who's moving around. So, none of those exist self-existently. All of them exist. All of them are empty of self-nature. So that's what, I'll repeat it one more time. Subhuti says, how is anybody going to understand the sutra in the future? And the Buddha says, don't worry, they're coming, even in the last 500-year era. There will be great bodhisattvas because they will understand that these four don't exist truly. And they won't grasp to that. As they do a good deed, they won't grasp to a self, which is only a projection from doing a good deed before.
So these are the four?
Yeah. Yeah. So when you're a bodhisattva, you know these fours, that none of that exists.
These exist.
And that is class. I'm sorry, I went a little bit speedy. I know it's heady and it's like a lot of information, but we got it in an hour, so that's pretty good. Thank you for. So next class we'll take it a little bit more easy.
Next class date is
So not next
February
week, but the
13th.
week after.
February 13th.
13. Friday is 13.
Oh yeah?
That's a good one.
It is good luck, yes.
So let's.
Is it,
Yeah, with Sashi. Sashi.
Oh, we go back to Sashi.
Yeah.
Sashi Pungi Dram Ri Ra Ling Shi Nyan Le Yin Padi Sangye Shindu Mikte Uwar Gira Gunam Shing La Chu Sho And then we do Gewa. Okay. Sunam Yeshi Sucho Shi Sunam Yeshi Nejo Nama Kuni Topashu. Thank you.
Miska, do you want to take that on the plane?
Well, maybe one piece left.
More.
I can't eat that much.
Okay.